Hi, everybody. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors and director of the Real Estate Academy of America. Continuing on with the changes that the Georgia Association of Realtors, or GAR, has made to the 2024 contract package. Please check out, I'll link below, all the other videos I have done in this series. Today, we are going to talk about the changes in the brokerage agreements, the seller brokerage agreement and the buyer brokerage agreement. So I'm going to share my screen and just show you the documents of the new special stipulations that GAR has added for this year. Two of them are very pertinent to today's topic. So stay tuned and I will cover those two brand new special stipulations as well. So let me share my screen and we will get started. So the first thing we are going to talk about is the exclusive seller brokerage agreement. And as I have mentioned throughout this series, GAR made universal changes. So any changes they made in this exclusive seller brokerage agreement, they also made in the non-exclusive seller brokerage agreement. So one of the first things that they changed is under the dates under paragraph A2, where it discusses the beginning of the actual agreement. So the beginning of the client relationship between the public seller and your broker, as well as the ending date and continuing on in the marketing commencement date. So any place that it has the date here in this section, they removed the 2000 or the 20 that precedes. What have I done? They eliminated the 200 that precedes the date. So for example, for 2023, now you'll have to write out whatever month, day, 2023. I think what was happening is agents were doing that anyway, so they just removed the 20 in all the date section. The next thing, this is the biggie, under the commission paragraph. So right now we are in the A paragraph, which is the fill in the blanks, where you, an agent, as an affiliated licensee of your broker or your broker based on your broker's policies, you negotiate the commission with the public seller, what commission the seller is agreeing to pay for the service of listing their home for sale and working with them as a client throughout the transaction through closing. So under paragraph 4A, it does start off in A4A, commission to be paid to seller's broker. The seller agrees to pay the broker the following commission at the closing of any contract to sell. And that has not changed. And that that money, that fee that the seller is paying for the service of the broker they hire is expressed as either a percent of the sale price, a flat fee, or some other arrangement. Now, this next section about paying a cooperating broker a portion of the seller's commission, this has been in our Georgia contracts for a number of years. It has been reworded for 2024 for clarification of all parties involved. So again, we are in the A paragraph where all of these terms and numbers are directed by the seller, negotiated with the broker based on a broker that a seller chooses to represent them in the sale of their house. So in this paragraph, it says, seller directs seller's broker to, and there's one of two boxes, pay or not pay a cooperating broker a portion of the seller's commission listed above. And then in all caps, it states, nothing herein shall obligate seller to direct the broker to pay any portion of its commission to a cooperating broker. In such event, the buyer shall be responsible for paying the cooperating broker's commission. If seller's broker is paying a cooperating broker a portion of its commission, it shall be in the amount set forth below, subject to the following exceptions. And then this is expressed as either a percent of the sale price, a flat fee, other, and here are exceptions. So in other words, if the seller in paragraph A4A agrees to pay a total commission to the seller's broker to be a client with respect to the selling of their home. Then if the seller says, yes, I want you to share part of your commission with a buyer's broker, then that you would mark pay, and then you would fill in how much of the total commission is being shared with the buyer's broker. And then exceptions, that has been there for, again, a couple of years at least. It is just listed a little bit differently for clarification reasons in 2024. So exceptions could be what we have seen in the past is something, there's an exception if, for example, the seller's broker is the one who shows a buyer at the initial showing. If the buyer has a broker, but their broker is not present at the initial showing. Or an exception could be if there is no other agent involved and one agent involved, there could be changes to this. I guess that would be not a different broker. But anyway, that's what goes there. All of this about separate commission on a lease, so forth and so on, is the same. Then we move on to the corresponding paragraph, which is paragraph B, further explanations to corresponding paragraphs in section A. And again, the commission section is spelled out very specifically to avoid any confusion. So under the first part, this has been there that there is an obligation by the seller to pay a commission. In the event the seller does enter into a contract to sell, lease, or purchase or option the property or any portion thereof during the term of this agreement with any buyer, seller agrees to pay the broker's commission at closing, regardless if the closing is before this seller brokerage agreement expires or not, and if applicable, broker's leasing commission. Now, this is what has been further clarified. Under paragraph 4B, the sharing of a broker's commission with a co-op broker. If the seller has directed the broker to share its commission with a cooperating broker, as specified in section A4B above that we just discussed, it shall be shared with a cooperating broker, if any, who procures the buyer of the property. If this agreement specifies that no commission is being paid by the seller's broker to the cooperating broker, then no such commission obligation shall exist, and the cooperating broker's commission shall be paid by the buyer. Seller's broker shall have no obligation to pay any cooperating broker who is not a participant in any of the multiple listing services in which the property is listed. A commission unless the co-op broker has negotiated and executed with the seller's broker a co-op commission agreement. And that is a reference to Form F258. And I will show you that. This is not a new form by any means, but for the purposes of this discussion, GAR has just referenced the form number, though it has already been there. And I apologize, I should have had this form pulled up already, but let me show you what this form looks like. It is GAR F258, and it is called Co-op Commission to be used prior to showing. Now, this looks very, I did that again. This looks very similar. Co-op commission agreement to be used prior to showing. This looks very similar to instructions to closing attorney, but it is not instructions to closing attorney. This is a form where a broker working with a seller and a broker working with a buyer can negotiate their commission between the two brokers before the buyer's agent shows the buyer the property. You absolutely want to use this for any properties not in an MLS or in an MLS of which your broker is not a member, including new construction. You identify the property. This is the commission paid by the seller. And if that is shared, and this is commission paid by the buyer, and if that is shared, and it is signed again by the buyer and the seller's broker. Again, not a new form. GAR has just added the reference number to that form for 2024. Additionally, in the 2024 seller brokerage agreements, where it discusses the seller's completing the seller's property disclosure statement, it just gave reference form number references to the forms that had already been addressed. There is a new paragraph, paragraph C6H. You are familiar already with this paragraph. It is just that GAR accidentally forgot to put this in the seller brokerage agreement, but it has been already in existence, for example, in the buyer brokerage agreement and other forms. And this is the FIRPTA affidavit that states, unless the seller is a foreign person, as that term is defined in the Internal Service Revenue, the IRS code, section 1445F3, the seller shall deliver to the closing attorney at closing a FIRPTA, which stands for Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act, affidavit indicating that seller is not a foreign person. If a seller is a foreign person, additional taxes may need to be withheld at closing. Again, that is not new verbiage. It has been in the seller brokerage agreement, and I believe in the purchase and sale. GAR just accidentally forgot to, in previous years, put it in the seller brokerage agreement, and it is there now. All right, let's move on to the buyer brokerage agreement. And this is the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement for 2024, GAR form F110. And again, similar changes to the non-exclusive. And in this one, again, the biggest changes have to do with commission. So in paragraph A4, we have commission, buyer's commission, obligations in purchasing real property. In all caps, buyer agrees to pay broker the commission set forth below at the closing of a contract to purchase, as that term is herein defined, entered into during the term of this agreement, minus any commission paid to the broker by either the seller's broker or the seller. Buyer acknowledges that neither sellers nor sellers' brokers are obligated to pay any commission to the broker. And then again, commission is expressed as a percent of the sale price, a flat fee, or other. Separate commission on lease has been in there. Protected period has been in there. Nothing changes. Also new for 2024 is this paragraph about commission on assignment. Should the buyer with whom you are working, who has signed this buyer brokerage agreement, ends up assigning a purchase and sale agreement to another buyer, that's what this is in reference to. And it states, if the buyer has the right to assign a purchase and sale agreement entered into during the term of this agreement or any protected period thereafter, parenthetically, go watch my previous video on the changes to the purchase and sale agreement. This will make more sense in that context. Buyer shall cause assignee, which is the buyer number 2 in essence, to be fully responsible for paying the broker's commission that would otherwise have been paid by the buyer. In such event, commission is not paid by the assignee. Buyer, meaning the buyer who signs this buyer brokerage, shall remain fully obligated to immediately pay such commission. The corresponding paragraph B4, remember we were in A4, now we're in B4, the corresponding paragraph, again regarding the buyer's commission obligation. It says buyer shall be obligated to pay broker's commission referenced herein in accordance with this agreement. The obligation of the buyer to pay broker's commission shall be offset by any commission paid to broker by either seller's broker or seller. The obligation of a seller's broker to pay a commission shall only exist if there is a prior written agreement between the seller's broker and broker which we just discussed in the seller brokerage agreement, or if the commission being offered by a seller's broker to broker is set forth in a multiple listing service in which the broker is a member. And then it goes on. Those are the changes, and the rest of the paragraph has already been in existence in our brokerage agreements for quite some time. Buyer's commission obligation shall exist even if the closing of the transaction occurs after the actual buyer brokerage agreement has expired. Buyer shall additionally be responsible for paying a commission if buyer defaults, so forth and so on. It also goes on to say nothing herein shall prevent broker from being paid a commission in excess of the commission reflected herein, meaning in paragraph A4, or from being paid a bonus. So again, that is the 2024 change. In a brand new paragraph, C10, and again, this has already been discussed. This is a new paragraph in all of our forms, and I have discussed this in the purchase and sale agreement, and it is paragraph C10, getting there. There we go. Warning to buyers regarding identity theft, indemnification, and covenant not to sue. This unfortunately has been just a really horrible situation for everybody involved regarding some fraudulent sellers. Again, this has already been previously discussed in other videos, so please watch those. But what it says is buyer acknowledges that there is an increasing amount of identity theft involving persons impersonating sellers of property and attempting to sell the property they don't own. This is particularly the case in the sale of lots and vacant properties. Buyers should take extra precautions to verify the identity of the sellers of any property buyer contracts to buy. Buyer acknowledges that with the increasing sophistication of the fraudsters, the risk of being defrauded exists regardless of the steps buyer and others may take to help the buyer verify the identity of the seller. Buyer is therefore strongly encouraged to purchase an enhanced title insurance policy on any property buyer is buying to try to protect against this risk. For an in consideration of $10 and other good and valuable consideration, the receipt and sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged, buyer covenants not to sue any brokers involved in any real estate transaction buyer enters into during the term of this agreement, covered transaction for any damage arising out of or relating to a fraudulent seller. All of the brokers involved in any covered transaction are express third-party beneficiaries of this section. So those are the changes that the Georgia Association of Realtors Forms Committee has made in the buyer brokerage agreement and in the seller brokerage agreement, reflecting commission. So, couple of things. What do you do if you are working with a buyer and the seller has you are made aware that the co-op commission to a buyer's broker is less than what the buyer has agreed to pay? Well, in the buyer's best interest, the buyer would, for what they have signed, take on that obligation to pay the difference in commission. But with everything, things are negotiable, including commission. So how do you do that? Well, let me show you the two new, and also those of you agents watching this know that a buyer getting a VA insured loan is prohibited by VA regulations to pay a broker's commission. So in light of that, GAR has come up with two new special stipulations for 2024. So let me show you those. These are two of the 5 brand new special stipulations that the Georgia Association of Realtors Forms Committee has added for 2024. The first one is Special Stipulation 619, buyer requests seller to pay buyer's broker's commission VA loan. Since under the VA loan program, buyer cannot pay buyer's brokers a commission. That's added in there because there are a lot of public buyers and public sellers that do not realize that that is a prohibition by the VA regarding that buyer getting a VA insured loan cannot pay the commission. So GAR's kindly added that in there for informational purposes to a seller. Buyer, so it says because under the VA loan program, buyer can't pay buyer broker's commission. Buyer hereby requests and seller hereby agrees to pay buyer's broker, and there's fill in the blank. That can be expressed as a percent of the sale price or a flat fee, blank dollars or blank percent of sale price as the total real estate commission due to the buyer's broker at closing. Nothing herein shall be interpreted as a request to alter, modify, or change the commission to be received by the seller's broker, if any, that the seller may have agreed to pay the seller's broker in a separate written agreement. And then the very same verbiage, just without the reference to a VA borrower, Special Stipulation 620. Buyer hereby requests and seller hereby agrees to pay buyer's broker, fill in the blank. And again, that is expressed as either a percent of the sale price or a flat fee as the total real estate commission due to buyer's broker at closing. Nothing herein shall be interpreted as a request to alter, modify, or change the commission to be received by the seller's broker, if any, that the seller may have agreed to pay the seller's broker in any separate written agreement. So this would be a special stipulation to use in the purchase and sale agreement where the buyer is asking the seller to pay the buyer's broker's commission. This is not the buyer's broker asking the listing broker to alter their commission. Why are we making that distinction? We're making that distinction, and that's what this last verbiage is, so that real estate agents and brokers do not violate license law. So the corresponding license law is unfair trade practice, or Georgia Code 43-40-25B35. And what that states is it is prohibited under that license law to, quote, induce any person to alter, modify, or change any licensee's fee or commission for real estate brokerage services without that licensee's prior written consent. So again, these special stipulations are not altering the listing broker's commission. They're asking the seller to pay the buyer broker's commission so that it does not violate license law. As with any special stipulation that you hear or learn of in any class or on any video, be sure to confirm the use of that special stipulation with your own broker before using it. That is it for the changes to the brokerage agreements, along with those two corresponding brand new special stipulations. Stay tuned. I hope you're enjoying this series. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these changes GAR is making. Please watch the other videos I am doing, and I'll link tons of information below. If you like this and want additional information, I would, if you're learning information from this, please subscribe to the channel. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors and director of the Real Estate Academy of America, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education. Bye. If you like that video, check out the one here. If you like the content on this entire channel, please click here to subscribe. I try to take even the most complicated of real estate situations and make them crystal clear. See what I did there? Real estate made crystal clear. Thank you guys so much for watching.